What is up, team? Killchain here, and today we're looking at the new hero talents. 8 new trees have dropped, and obviously their various pairings will be outlined. I don't know enough about like tanking or range DPS in general, so we're going to avoid them, but I do want to have a look over all the melee-based ones, or anything that has a pairing with the melee spec. But most importantly, we'll start off with the tried and true warrior. It's my main. If you see the channel, then yeah, you obviously know that already anyway. But if you're not, hi, how you going? We're going to have a look at the Colossus and the Arms Protection Warrior link. And I haven't seen any of these. I've seen some comments of people on Discord from some friends and stuff like that. So I've kind of had a little bit of a spoiler, but in this regard, we're just going to go in fresh and we'll have a look at how, Colossus is shaping up. So most importantly, the main thing that the comment was regarding was, oh, we're getting a rework now. It's totally fine. I do not read this as a rework in any way, shape, or form. So please, for the love of God, if you're a warrior and you've read this developer note where they're saying the warrior tree will be updated within the War Within to make the shockwave talent, blah, blah, blah. I view that as literally just swapping some nodes around, or maybe culling a particular irrelevant node, putting it down, or maybe even just shifting one of the points out and just being able to link it in somewhere else or whatever. This is not a rework, I promise you. I don't know that. I could be very surprised, but yeah, I guess the forewarning here is, please, for the love of God, don't read into this as a rework. We're not getting a rework yet. They would have used completely different terminology if they were reworking. They're just saying it's the warrior side of the tree is going to get updated, and I have a feeling it's literally just going to be swapping a couple of talents around the place. So cool, that's fine. We'll avoid that for now. Let's actually have a look at the talents themselves. So we have Demolish. It is an active ability, and it has a 45-second cooldown. Now, straight out of the gate, that seems a bit lame. Another button that we have to micromanage is Arms. Arms is definitely the one that has much more different buttons to push in terms of button bloat. It's not unmanageable, don't get me wrong, but adding another one in there is going to be just tedious, if anything. But it doesn't replace an ability. We'll have a look. Unleash a series of precise and powerful strikes against your target and enemies within 8 yards of it. The splash of 8-yard damage is pretty cool. It doesn't say there's a cap or anything here either. Whereas usually they're quite quick and eager to say, you know, deals less damage beyond 5 targets or something like that. I've noticed no cap mentioned. There very well could be in terms of like behind the scenes as well, because let's be real, they hate warriors having no caps on ability damage, so we'll see what happens. But really cool. I like the fact that it's an AoE. Now, the way it says unleash a series of powerful and precise strikes, blah, 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 it actually sounds like it's functioning very similar to Rampage so far, especially given the fact that you can still block and parry and dodge, etc. I'm wondering whether it's going to route you like the legendary, or whether it's going to allow you to still move like Rampage, because Rampage functions the same way in terms of it's multiple hits that are doing one ability cast, if that makes sense. So I'm not unsure. It actually sounds more like it's leaning towards Rampage for now. So moving over to the next bottom left area, Martial Expert, your critical strike damage is increased by 10%, and the amount blocked by your critical blocks is increased by 10%. I'm not really worried about the protection side of things. Every time I've tried to get into tanking, I just don't give a shit. Like, it's just it's not me, man. I'm a Demouge boy, what can I say? But the critical strike damage is pretty good here, because that will obviously synchronize well with talents that already increase the same thing, and we see a lot of those talents not only from the arms side specialization, but even the baseline warrior side of the tree. There are bits and bobs where you can pick up crit damage, so that's going to be quite useful in that regard. Colossal Might. Mortal Strike and Shield Slam grant a stack of Colossal Might. Colossal Might increases the damage dealt by Demolish. Okay, so that feeds into that. Cool. And stacks up to 5 times. So the whole point is 5 Mortal Strikes, then you do your big Demolish. You should easily be able to get 5 Mortal Strikes within that 45-second window. So it's just going to be sort of automatic there, so it's kind of irrelevant. They could have just baked it in, but they have to have talent points, so for that regard, fine. Either way, 5 Mortal Strikes within the 45-second cooldown window is probably pretty realistic from an arms warrior. So yeah, that's 100% fine. Now, the choice node here on the right, Bone Shaker Shockwave Stun is increased by 2 seconds. That's kind of lame. I mean, it's good to have a longer stun, but that is completely irrelevant in every scenario. Like, Very rarely is the length of the stun like a priority, and it's more about the fact whether or not you get a stun off. You don't care if it's like a half a second stun. While it will be useful in certain scenarios where like a lot of melee damage is incoming, like just auto attack damage on a tank in a Mythic Plus environment. Obviously, in a raid environment, stuns are exceptionally useless in 90% of scenarios. Very rare cases you might want to be able to, group a bunch of ads in and stun them up. Even fire could be an example of that. But you've got just so many other stuns available to you that it's less about the duration of the stun and more about the fact that you're just interrupting casts and things like that. Bone Shaker will literally never be taken. I can promise you that right now. So Earthquaker, the Shockwave also knocks up the enemies into the air and reduces... Ooh, okay. Reduced cooldown's pretty cool, especially if you manage to get the choice nodes of the current Shockwave ability, which would never get taken because, again, it's so far deep down in the tree that you lose too much. Whereas if it becomes a part of the pathing system for Shockwave and everything, this could actually be really good because it shifts Shockwave away from caring about whether the stun duration is, there at all. Like if there's a diminishing return on the Shockwave stun, that's fine. They don't get stunned, cool. They at least still get knocked up, which most importantly is going to be an interrupt. And there's no cooldown on knockups, or not a cooldown. There's no diminishing return on knockups as far as I'm aware. Correct me if I'm wrong, down in the comments, blast me, that's fine. But I'm pretty sure knockups are like one of the, if not the only diminishing return that just doesn't exist for that kind of thing. So that's really cool. I like that because that'll still interrupt. And compared to the Bone Shaker choice node, 100%, no one's ever going to take Bone Shaker. It is all Earthquaker the entire time. And the fact that it reduces the cooldown, plus you have those... the augmentation talents that will augment Shockwave in some capacity. If that whole thing gets shifted into a nicer pathing into the tree, then that means it could be realistic that you get the one that increases the damage as well as reduces the cooldown on Shockwave if you hit more than 3 targets, I believe it is. So that's really good. I actually like that. Shifting it away from caring about the stun and the fact that it knocks up could be really, really strong. Especially if this is an uncapped damage, we're really shifting to Arms taking over Fury in terms of the just general Mythic Plus vibe because they bring more to the table by guaranteeing an AoE interrupt. And you could get that to quite a short cooldown. So I believe Shockwave already, you know what, we're going to... I'm sure they've got tools here. Talent calculator, and arms. We're going to do that in another tab. So, for the sake of the argument, so this is the particular one that we're talking about. The increased damage, and it will always create... I mean, cool. I'm sure. If this whole section happens to be moved to somewhere in the middle of the tree, then you could potentially pick up both pathing, or maybe they'll merge these into one sort of pathing thing. I don't know. We'll have to find out. But this is the one in particular that I'm talking about. Reduction by 15 seconds. Add another 5 seconds, so that's 20 seconds. A 40-second cooldown goes to a 20-second cooldown, and allowing people to do a knock-up every 20 seconds is rivaling that of like the Enhanced Shaman, or just Shaman in general with their Shockwave. So... their ability is not called Shockwave. You know what I mean? The knock-up thing. I can't remember for Shaman off the top of my head. That's actually massive. Like, genuinely, that is going to provide a lot of AoE stops for a warrior. Because, once again, the Shockwave doesn't limit how many it hits in its area. Like, I'm pretty sure the fact that it will also knock them up, cool, that's fine. But, stunning all enemies within 10 yards. There you go. So, that's actually very, very big. Giving Arms Warrior like an actual 20-second AoE stop like that, that's absolutely unreal. I hope people don't like gloss over that because I can't stress how big that is, especially because Arms is currently situated as the more uncapped AoE damagey spec, and then giving that the ability to then also have the 20-second AoE stop, unreal, absolutely massive, cool. So now we got one against many, Shockwave, Cleave, and Whirlwind, and Revenge. Deal 5% more damage per target affected up to 5. So this is definitely an AoE talent. I mean, obviously, it does more damage per hit. It's capped out at the 5. Sure, fine. It is interesting because you have things like Whirlwind and stuff that go beyond the 5, but it'll only increase the damage up to 5. Shockwave included here, right? But 5% times 5, that's an extra 25 damage. If you then add that to things like the Sonic Boom, again, if you can path into this, that's a pretty gnarly increase of damage. That means every 20 seconds you're doing this absolute fucking bonkers shockwave that's knocking them up and doing really good damage. Again, I cannot stress this enough, the fact that it hits all targets in that range. Arms Warrior is looking really, really potentially solid for Mythic Plus, given that you have this 20-second cooldown, big hitting, like huge damage, AoE stop, fucking everything, all the stars are aligning to make this potentially very good. The arterial bleed though, Colossal Might increases the damage of random deep wounds. Okay, so as you're stacking this up, that'll increase the other bleeds that you do. And it's 2% per stack. So if you go up to the 5 stacks, that's obviously an extra 10% damage. As long as you're in a position where it's better to still use the Colossal Might stacks on Demolish, then that's fine. If it ends up being like more ideal to just hold on to Colossal Might because you don't ever want to use this because this doesn't do enough damage, that's a bit of a shame. That also could be based off single target versus AoE, right? So in this case, 1 against many, 100% clearly an AoE talent, in which case you want to be pumping that because that also, by reading it, would suggest Demolish will hit multiple targets. Obviously, it says your target enemies within 8 yards of it. Cool. So if you've got a nice cluster group, that'll be doing AoE. You're going to pick up 1 against many as well. That all sort of feeds into itself. But when you're on single target mode, raid bosses, things like that, you probably pick up arterial bleed instead, in which case, depending how much damage Demolish does and the fact that you're losing value from it, so to speak, because you're not hitting all enemies within 8 yards of it, right? You might end up just holding on to Colossal Might the entire time and just having the extra bleed damage, because that's 10%, right? So interesting. We'll see how we go with that. Colossal Might increases the damage of Overpower and Revenge. Okay. So again, they're really putting this weird card, but it's not per stack. Otherwise, I would have mentioned it per stack like this. This is just a flat 2%. At first, I was like, oh, that actually sounds bad because they're incentivizing holding it, but also incentivizing using the Colossal Might. Like you just bounce between the two. But this is going to have like a 99% uptime anyway, right? Because the very first Mortal Strike, or Shield Slam, but again, we're not talking prot. The very first Mortal Strike you do after using the stacks on Demolish is immediately going to get you your first stack of Colossal Might back, in which case this immediately becomes active again. So it's only for one possible global that you wouldn't have this extra 2% pumping out from it. It's fine. You just immediately reapply it. It's going to have a high uptime. I'm not worried about that. The fact that it's not a per stack is probably also realistically a good thing, because if you went up to 10 stacks of Overpower and the fact that your bleeds will do an extra 10% per stack as well, then you're even further incentivizing. There very well really could be a possibility where you just would never use Demolish in single target. So I'm glad they at least avoided that for now, because the more per stack kind of things they aim for, the more we're just never hitting Demolish, but it depends how much damage. Obviously, right? I don't like when they're trying to incentivize two different things like that, but this is irrelevant because it will have 99% uptime anyway. Cool. All right. This is looking more like a defensive side of things. So we've got No Stranger to Pain. Total damage prevented by Ignore Pain increased by 15%. Really solid. I think, yeah, most people pick that. And then the Rally, taking damage has a low chance to give you second wind. Okay, so second wind restores 6% of your health every 1 second. So you're going to get 12% of your health back. Now, it obviously activates when you've not taken damage for 5 seconds, which, I mean, yeah, okay. But the fact that it will activate it, it says a low chance as well. Honestly, people aren't really going to take that because you wouldn't want to be taking damage to try and fish for it. And then the more damage you take trying to fish for it, it's still a low chance anyway, and it only gives you 12% of your health. I don't know. People are going to go for the tried and true Ignore Pain in every scenario because it's much more controlled and doesn't put you at risk by trying to fish for taking damage, if that makes sense. So, cool. Practice Strikes. Now we have the Mortal Strike and Shield. Okay, flat damage increase. Fine. True Might. Your Mortal Strike and Shield Slam critical strikes grant an additional stack of might. That's really good vibes because typically we always go for crit anyway. And the fact that we're incentivized with more crit damage means the more we crit, the more crit damage has an effect because it's just a direct compounding effect from crit strike damage and crit strike chance. And then double bang, you're getting Colossal Might stacks are even quicker with the crits there, so even better. You deal 5% more damage and take 2.5% less damage. Okay, so it's just built-in versatility. Okay. I think that's sort of supposed to just be a passive because you're going into the arms mode, right? And then your sizing is increased by 5%. They say that size doesn't matter, all right? So just saying, but sure, I guess that's like a visual trying to, yeah, arbitrarily make it known that this guy's physically bigger than your other warrior, which means you know he's a Colossus warrior. Probably something in the lines of, for PvP side of things, they're just trying to thematically dictate, hey, you're a Colossal warrior, you get to look a bit bigger, okay? And then finally, the absolute awesome capstone. Let's have a read, and hopefully it's awesome. Unstoppable Force, okay? Colossal Might now stacks to 10 times. Okay, so it was previously 5 times. Now stacks up to 10. This is scary, okay? Because once again, immediately just reading that first line, this now goes to 20% increase random deep runes damage. Is that 20% increase to your 2 bleeds worth not hitting Demolish in single target? Potentially. You just sit at max stats the entire time. I don't know. That could be interesting. We'll have to see. And then that's, again, because it's not per stack, that's irrelevant. But if that was per stack as well, and you both had 20% increased damage on Overpower and Deep Runes and Rend, there's no way, surely, you would want to hit Demolish every 45 seconds. You just wouldn't give a shit. You'd just keep the extra damage from the bleeds and stuff. But if you would gain a stack of Colossal Might and are at max stacks, your cooldown of Demolish is reduced by 2 seconds. Interesting. Okay. So you're doing crits. You're getting this stack of Colossal Might up pretty quick. Let's say you hit your 10 stacks because you got 5 crits in a row because it was 2 per stack. Yay, go us. Then while you're at max stats, every time you're gaining another one from crits and the likes and just hitting Mortal Strike in general, that's helping reduce this by 2 seconds. So it will take 5 globals. Let's assume 100% crit chance. That's impossible, but let's just assume. So it will take 5 globals to hit your Demolish. Well, you can't Mortal Strike every single global either, because it's not just crit strikes. It has to specifically be a Mortal Strike. Yeah, I don't know. That's interesting. Because I still think it's going to take probably 10 globals to get your 10 stacks, right? And so you're looking at around, we're just going to arbitrarily say, because haste is always like the bee's knees for arms anyway. So you're assuming like roughly a 1 second GCD. So it's going to take 10 globals, 10 seconds, let's say 12, just by giving a little bit of extra wiggle room. Within 12 seconds, you're at max stats. And then each thing you're doing after that, you're able to reduce it down. So yeah, you could probably get it down to maybe a 30-second cooldown. That seems reasonable. And then while channeling, okay, so it's definitely a channel. This is sounding much more like the legendary now. While channeling Demolish, you are grounded, making you immune. 100%. This is keeping you still. It's not going to work like Rampage. And the fact that it says it's a channel means you can't move on it. Okay. 100% it is you stand still. Now, this has its benefits, right? But also careful consideration where you need to. Given the fact that it will root you, there will be cool mechanics that you can avoid and sort of like, you know, not get stunned, not get pushed back and things like that. But also potentially dangerous, like things like Smolderon. So the Smolderon does is knockback, and where you get knocked back to dictates where the orbs spawn. Whereas if you used your legendary now, and in this case, if you use Demolish against Smolderon, it wouldn't knock you back, which means all your 5 orbs spawn really close to Smolderon himself, and you have to be very quick to get them all. And yeah, that can be a little bit of dangerous mode like that. Dark Heart Thicket, for example, if you've popped your Demolish and then the AoEs happen to spawn, like your mushrooms and things like that, you're going to have to be very careful keeping that, you know, micromanaging when you're using Demolish, given that we now know that, yeah, it keeps you in place. It depends how long the channel is for. We know the cooldown, and we know it says a series of strikes, but is this over 1 second, 5 seconds, 2 seconds? We don't know. That will be interesting to see as well, how long it's going to lock you down for. Time will tell, who knows. Now, doesn't give any indication. It's just directly, what the tooltip says. So, okay, we'll have to find out. Very interesting. Honestly, really, really sleeper powerful level. Given that Shockwave now turns into a knockup, huge, absolutely game changer for Mythic Plus. Arms already has quite a lot of bigger AoE centric thing than Fury. Fury is like absolutely hard capped to 5 targets, and then has a couple of things that, obviously go beyond that, like Odin's Fury at the moment. So it's not like it can't do uncapped AoE, but it's much, much more limited than, say, Arms. And then compounding on that fact, though, these couple of things that are really pushing us in a good light, and one against many is sort of helpful. But Demolish looks like it would be really, really useful in AoE, and our Shockwave gets up. If Shockwave genuinely gets repositioned, where you can pick up its 2 augmentation kind of talent augment things, if they merge it or keep them as 2 separate, whatever the case may be, if you're able to actually get the 350% damage increase, and that it'll always crit, as well as the 5% reduction and the knockup, as well as the extra 25% that it will provide thanks to where was it? I remember seeing it somewhere. Oh yeah, the Shockwave increased damage here per target affected, and then the fact that you can reduce its cooldown when you hit at least 3 targets, a 20-second AoE knockup, massive damage. I genuinely am so excited to see this in play. It's going to be absolutely wild. So I don't know. I'm actually pretty happy with how they've pushed it towards much more of that. Obviously, you have a lightning sort of god-esque Mountain Thane style of things, whereas this is that true Earth Warden, Earth guy, mountain dude, right? And it's really fed into that theme, I suppose, with Shockwave and that Colossus kind of vision that you would imagine what a Colossus will be. So I'm pretty happy with it. Gameplay wise, it seems like it has a lot of potential. The only thing I would nitpick about it is I don't like that has to lock you in place. It should be fine, but for those moments that you have to sort of like work around that, that's a little bit annoying. And I don't like the incentive where they want you to keep the Colossal Might stuff, but they also want you to spend it. So it's like the dichotomy of want to hold on to Colossal Might and not spend it to reduce its stacks, as well as you do want to spend it for Demolish. It could just be as simple as in single target you hold on to it, in AoE you don't, or it could just be you want to spend it all the time, anytime ever, right? And you're just sort of fishing to get it maxed out as quick as possible to help start reducing the Demolish cooldown. Who knows? Time will tell. I don't mind it, but I've generally prefer to steer clear of anything that tries to pull you in 2 separate directions at once, right? So there we go, Colossus. All right, I'm very excited. Let me know what you guys think down below as well. I'll be very curious what your thoughts are, and we will be checking out the other melee specs as well to nitpick them. But I'm glad we started with the Warrior. Colossus looking pretty good, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.